generally speaking, a efficient facility is a safe facility and vice versa. So as we work with customers, a lot of the use cases that we support sort of bridge the gaps between efficient operations and making sure that they have a safe work environment.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Large machinery, heavy lifting, and high traffic are inherent risks in warehousing and logistics, and ensuring employees' safety is critical. Companies that proactively invest in robust workplace safety programs not only protect their workforce, but also enhance productivity, reduce operational disruptions, and foster a culture of trust and engagement. Joining me for today's discussion is Jack Braniff from Voxel AI. Welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Ellen. Great to be here.
Great to have you. I'm really looking forward to our topic today. But before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit better. So today's icebreaker question is, what is the best trip you've ever taken?
Oof, that's a great question and a hard one to answer. But top of mind, right after college, I backpacked for 3 weeks in Vietnam and essentially motorbiked from north to south. And it was a complete adventure. It was solo travel. Learned a lot about myself, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country.
I would have to say, so I've never been to the Far East, and I'd love to visit any of the countries over there, any of the Asian countries. They're so interesting, and they've got so much history. So I am a little bit jealous. I've not traveled that far yet, but I would have to say mine would be a trip that I took, and this was, oh gosh, what year is it? 20 years ago now. And I was newly married, and my mother-in-law before she retired, she taught Latin. And so every couple of years for the school trip for her Latin students, she would take a trip to Italy. And my husband and I got to chaperone that trip with a bunch of Latin students traveling around Tuscany and all over Italy. It was a lot of fun. It was a school trip, but because we were chaperones, we got to go do some other things once the kids were, settled in their rooms. And that was just really a lot of fun to get to go do all that and see all of those sites around Italy. And I'd love to be able to do it again.
That sounds pretty incredible. Italy is such a special place. That would be probably my close second if I had to pick another, to Rome, and then recently went to Sicily as well, which is an incredible island, but sounds amazing.
Yeah, I haven't been to the islands, but I remember driving through Tuscany and visiting Assisi were my favorite parts of the trip. I mean, Rome's beautiful. Florence is amazing. Milan's very cool, even Venice. But I really liked the rolling hills of Tuscany and the people there and the food. It was just amazing. I would go back in a heartbeat. All right. So back to our discussion today, which is not travel. It is a little bit about staying in one place and being safe there in these facilities, mostly warehousing. And so tell our listeners a little bit about what Voxel AI is and how it works.
Voxel was founded in 2020 in San Francisco with the mission to protect people who make the world essentially work. So we are a computer vision AI company that leverages existing security camera infrastructure and relays it with our AI-driven computer vision models to essentially flag risk in real time and allow our customers to be a lot more proactive as they're mitigating risk and driving safety culture within their facilities.
So what you said 2020, and the question begs, was it a reaction to what was happening in 2020 and slightly before that? Or was this already in the works as just part of the logistics industry?
So I actually love our origin story. So our founders are some very impressive people, especially on the technical side. They didn't necessarily go into it thinking that they were building technology for the purpose of workplace safety. They were more than anything taking some of their experience, working at places and institutions like Carnegie Mellon, Google, Uber, a few of them coming together, sort of playing with really innovative, breaking edge tech at this time when everyone had a little bit more time on their hands or figure it out, and realized that there was really a lot of opportunity in the computer vision space. And, ultimately we're able to work with some advisors and for a few of our founders, pull on some really personal stories and find a neat way to take this innovative tech and tie it to an area of opportunity that, both allows us to build AI with a really positive mission, which ultimately is to ensure that people get home and return safely to their families each night. But there's also a massive market opportunity. So I think as they were getting in and realizing that the type of product fit and the existing infrastructure that really was in place in a lot of these facilities, there's over $167 billion in injury-related claims each year. And so thinking about the market opportunity there, purely from a business standpoint, there was a lot of runway. But again, I think the initial reason for making the correlation was a lot more on sort of the much more personal side of what we're doing, which again is ensuring that folks that really drive our economy, drive our country, are able to work or return safely to their homes each night.
That's amazing. Now, I've interviewed others in this same general field of workplace safety and the types of, it's usually a wearable tech that allows to collect those biometric markers and understand what's happening as people are moving physically within their job and their function. So you said yours integrates with the existing security system, so the security cameras, and just watching an overview. How does that work exactly with the overlay? Is it just identifying movement patterns? I mean, is it able to get close enough and granular enough to see some of these smaller tasks that are happening, especially when we're talking about a security system? Because I don't know, I've seen some security system video and it's not always the best quality. So I'm interested to understand a bit more of how that works.
Yeah. So I think first major observation from our end is the vast majority of facilities that we work with, whether it's a manufacturing site, a e-commerce or retail facility, a logistics hub like a port or a terminal, they really do have a lot of the camera infrastructure in place. And really, even over the last few years, we've seen more and more companies, invest in having sort of robust cameras that really cover a vast majority of the areas that we want to see. There's certainly, instances where we work with customers to optimize the camera views, to maybe move them around, add a couple cameras to really focus in on, some of the use cases that are going to drive value. But honestly, I would say that's sort of a minority at this point. I'm, at least from my seat, my perspective, a lot of the warehouses or again, these different sites that I'll go visit and when we're seeing our customers have the infrastructure in place. In terms of actually deploying our software, our technology, it's really quite seamless. There's a small hardware component. We do ship a box out to the sites to compress the videos and make sure we're not putting any strain on their network infrastructure. But generally speaking, we can be live with our customers in a matter of days, given the way we're able to, again, deploy on top of the cameras they have in place. And in some cases, a week from working with the customer initially, we're already at a point where we're looking at live data from their facility that has been, essentially run through our models, and we're flagging that risk and starting to have those conversations around how do we use this to actually drive change management with our customers, sort of in that time frame, which is pretty awesome and sort of a different experience for me coming from a lot more enterprise technology that may take weeks to months to deploy. Being able to see this sort of almost in real time, drive action for our customers is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that is a really quick turnaround time. So what types of things is the software designed to capture and collect and study in terms of, workplace safety, ergonomics, and movement?
Yeah. So really, the use cases we support really align or generally align to sort of the largest leading indicators of injuries. And so, just to give a handful of examples, a large focus on ergonomics, so overreaching, bending, are we seeing movements that essentially, could lead to, especially if repeated over and over, pretty serious injuries. A strong focus on vehicles. So, proximity, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, speeding. Speeding's been a really interesting use case that we've been working with a lot of our logistics customers on, even some outdoor views, looking at semis sort of ripping through facilities. And then maybe another general category, a large category is area controls. Is a person somewhere that they're not supposed to be? Is an object sitting somewhere that it's not supposed to be, blocking an exit, blocking a fire extinguisher? Is a door left open for too long, which, in some cases, if you're in a cold storage facility, could be a big issue from an energy efficiency standpoint. So, again, we're very focused on safety, and, a lot of it's the leading indicators that ultimately could lead to individuals getting injured. But there's a really interesting sort of operational component too, as you're thinking about, some of the things I mentioned. Generally speaking, a efficient facility is a safe facility, and vice versa. So as we work with customers, a lot of the use cases that we support sort of bridge the gaps between efficient operations and making sure that they have a safe work environment.
So I'm interested in some of the tangible benefits, especially in this case, since we're using a structure and an infrastructure that the company already had, which is security cameras. We're assuming that they have them and they're going to be pointed at the right things. So, if a company already has a security camera focused on these logistic areas, they should be able to see using this footage if someone's speeding through the area, if someone's wearing their PPE, if someone is, not stacking things the way they're supposed to, or if they're bending too often. But obviously the AI helps identify those things and those patterns a little bit more quickly. So what are some of the tangible results that your clients are able to receive in these benefits? What are they able to find more easily, and what are they able to correct more quickly?
I love this question. This is really sort of where my role and my team focuses with our customers. How do we ensure that we are driving tangible benefit? While at the same time, a lot of times sort of driving more of the qualitative benefit of our customers feeling like they're having a much safer facility. But tangible benefit is critical to ensure that customers want to continue working with us, that we're able to expand, and that frankly we know that we're being successful. And so, first starting with maybe sort of the tactical, more nitty gritty in terms of how we measure it. One of the primary ways is looking at claims information. And so, as we work into a facility, maybe running 3 years of their historical data, where are injuries occurring? What area of the facility, what type of actions are actually driving, injuries, or driving sort of lost time, things that, both impact operations, but also, again, to sort of our mission, are leading to unsafe environments. And so we'll use that data to really drive focus, and it definitely changes from site to site. Working with a customer pretty heavily right now that's very focused on ergonomics from a very sort of manual packing and unpacking processes. And so they're using our data, around understanding exactly where in the facility they're getting the most ergo hits, sort of the time, what shifts it's happening. They're running heat maps, so able to sort of see exactly where in a camera view these actions are occurring. And then using that to drive sort of better coaching. How do they build a much sort of more robust safety program to actually coach the behaviors that are occurring and be very targeted? But I think very, in terms of extremely tangible changes that they're able to make without driving, complete change in human behavior, they're able to invest in the infrastructure that makes the job a lot more efficient. So, new tables, changing sort of the configuration of conveyor lines and belts and the heights at which, so, those risky behaviors aren't happening in the first place. So I guess sort of in summary, regardless if it's ergo, vehicle, area controls, compliance with certain article of clothing like bump caps or safety vests, we really see two core ways of tackling it. Using the information to drive a lot more efficient management of processes and safety-based programs, but then also our customers taking a lot more initiative of how do we use sort of a data-first approach to configuring our facilities to really optimize for a much safer work environment.
And you've mentioned a couple different, aspects of what you're able to measure, to record and measure. And we're talking about the logistics in general. You mentioned, ports and logistics facilities. 3PLs is what comes to my mind, doing logistics for multiple different brands, manufacturing. How does the platform adapt to the unique challenges of those? Because those are not exactly interchangeable. There's distinct differences between those types of facilities and the work that's done within them.
A couple of thoughts here. First and foremost, our platform is quite flexible and our models are quite flexible, especially with the use cases that we've really decided to sort of prioritize in terms of the offerings we provide to our entire customer base, regardless if it's a terminal or inside a warehouse or within a back of a store. A lot of times those same sort of behaviors around ergonomic risks, vehicles moving around, they exist sort of across these different facilities. So first and foremost, the platform is quite flexible in that regard. But I think one thing that's really unique about our approach in terms of how we developed our software and our AI is we're constantly training based off of site level data. And then, essentially optimizing our models based off the insights that we're seeing customer by customer, site by site, use case by use case. And so, how do we make sure that, we are capturing, vehicle proximity when it's a tugger versus, a forklift? It's constantly sort of taking those data streams from different sites in and making sure that, those use cases are tangible and work for the individual operations that, slightly differ between the different types of customers that we support.
Interesting. And one other thing that comes to mind right now, and it's unique because we're in this age where we're seeing a lot of autonomous vehicles and those interacting with human lines of transport within these facilities. How does that factor in when you're dealing with, I mean, obviously this autonomous vehicle is following a track. It's following a path that it has been programmed to do. But then you're having to deal with the human element of don't walk in front of the train as it's coming at you, or it's going to cause a disruption or potentially cause an injury. So how does that factor into what you're able to measure? Or does it even make a difference?
Well, I think it's a really interesting point. And I think it's an extremely exciting time just for our industry in general. And I think, particularly computer vision and what we're doing, we're going to continue to see so much sort of rapid iteration as AI continues to drive, sort of more and more workflow within industrial facilities. That being said, we have strong conviction that we're never going to completely take away the human element. And so being able to have the really tangible, unbiased data to understand when human behavior introduce risks, is something that we're always going to be able to do. And I think as we see more and more innovation, there's going to be continued investment in more camera views, facilities built out really, with the focus of having technology like ours and many other places in place. And that's just only going to expand the use cases that we can support and sort of the interaction between more automation and humans that really are going to ensure that these facilities are always operating as they need to be.
I think that's one thing that we see at MEBOK, especially when we're looking at a lot of these new facility designs that we're working with companies on is, we have to take into account that there are these autonomous vehicles and they're going to work one way and people are going to work a different way. And having those two differences in the way the work gets accomplished managed efficiently within the space and without having so much there's going to be overlap, but without having too much interference with the other. Because if you're having to cross lines, then it's not efficient. And, the more it can work in tandem and parallel, the better things flow throughout the warehouse. So I imagine that that's also what you're seeing when you're looking at some of these, maybe more holistic views from these video feeds is how this works and maybe where things need to be optimized differently in order to make it safer. Is that an accurate statement?
So I think that's spot on. I think just, sort of as a side note and piling onto your comment, I toured a terminal facility the other day that has introduced an immense amount of automation with massive amounts of machinery. And frankly, it's changing their operations, but it's introducing entirely new factors around sort of safety protocols and protocols in general that, sort of an unbiased data set like ours and understanding how that automation is functioning with the way things have done traditionally and the way that there's always going to need to be intervention with other third parties potentially coming on these facilities, again, opens up sort of a really interesting area for sort of the intersection of technology and understanding, what's working and where there are areas to continue growing.
Yeah, especially in these brownfield type facilities where they've been doing something a certain way for so long. Now that the automation has come in and, making that adjustment, it's not just adjusting to the fact that there is an automation component to that facility, but also that the human element has to adapt with it to your change management point earlier that, there's a lot of training and understanding and making sure that people know what their role is in the facility, and along with all of this automation, in order to remain safe and, to your point, make it home and uninjured at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely.
So, with having video component and using the security systems, that raises a lot of questions, especially regarding privacy. It's an ethical issue of, are we invading the individual's privacy with this much visualization of every detail of what they're doing throughout the day? So, what does Voxel AI do to ensure employee privacy when you're doing this kind of engagement where you're watching every move?
Yeah. It's not a light topic. It's something we take extremely seriously. And, again, sticking true to our mission, it's a lot more around driving safe behaviors holistically than any sort of tracking of individuals or, data being leveraged for any sort of punitive action. So, a few things that we do, across the board that are, absolutely fundamental to our technology. We do not do any biometric tracking, so it takes the individual out of it completely. Sure, we're seeing an individual perform behaviors, but you're not able to track that person across a facility or, sort of any of the big brother, to fears that might arise from having a technology around this. It's behavioral based. What are we seeing that ultimately, done repeated over and over across different individuals in different areas of the facility are going to lead, to potential risks that ultimately could lead to harm. On top of that, we take it a step further of even taking the person out of it. So enabling blurring in the sense where you actually have no idea who is performing what action, rather that a person performed that behavior in this area. And, sort of across both those examples, you can see individual clips that we're flagging where those behaviors occur. But really where our customers are effective using our information is looking at the holistic data set. So how do we understand observation trends over time? How do we understand sort of the proximity of incidents, within certain areas of the facility, and then using that data to ultimately drive larger change management instead of saying, we need to change behavior with this one individual person at this one exact time.
So, what upcoming features, technologies, what else is Voxel looking to further enhance this tool in order to, make workplaces safer? Are there any new features in the pipeline?
We have some really, really exciting plans for the future. I think first and foremost, in June, we closed our Series B, which really gives us, the capital to really go and invest and expand what we're doing on behalf of our customers. So I think extremely exciting time from that perspective. But, a few of the things that we're focused on, first and foremost, putting a little bit more sort of prescriptive insights in front of our customers. So we have a huge amount of data that, is sort of flagging the certain behaviors that ultimately could lead to change. How do we continue to invest more and more to really decipher that information and allow it to be very bite-sized insights that customers can use to drive those right behaviors? That's something that we do with our customers today based off our support model and my team really of safety professionals working hand in hand with our customers to take a data set and understand how we translate it to action. But I think there's a massive opportunity to productize that and invest in leveraging AI to really drive some more of those insights to make it easier for our customers to drive action on their side. On top of that, I think continuing to expand the use cases that we support. And so, we're working with really innovative companies today that, sort of see the application of computer vision at a partner like Voxel in their facilities is sort of a gateway to, so many different use cases, whether it's around quality control, understanding even more risk parameters that may exist. So I think just working hand in hand with our customers to really understand, what are those use cases that are going to drive value, whether it's just a couple quick examples, working underneath loads that are extended over your head, or more proximity and understanding area controls outside of a facility. Are there people that are interacting in a dock door that shouldn't be there? embedding analytics that allow us to review this information in the form of heat maps directly in the platform and access that data in real time. So I think quite a few ways that we're thinking about sort of investment in the future and extending sort of the value proposition and the level of stickiness and engagement that we're able to drive with our customers.
What kind of limitations does this technology have in assessing the safety of a particular activity or a particular area? Because what we're doing is you're looking, so it's visual, but there's other aspects of the work in that area, perhaps the temperature that may or may not be able to be recorded from that or included in that data set. If you're working in a warehouse and it's 90 degrees, that's a safety concern. That's not just a, environmental comfort level. It's dangerous. Or in cold chain warehouses where it's in a freezing or refrigerated and using the correct, obviously the PPE, but the amount of time that's spent there. So what are some other aspects that need to be included or considered when using this tool and looking at some of this information? Because it's looking at, looking.
First, just as a aside, have you ever been in a negative 40-degree freezer in a cold chain facility?
Yes. Yes, I have, actually.
One lesson, wear thick socks whenever you do that, because you always get big jacket. You tour a facility like that, but they don't give you socks. So that's something that I've learned, on the job here. But back to sort of the question at hand. I think one of the really exciting aspects of this type of technology is the amount of flexibility there is. And so, to your point, we might not be able to capture the actual temperature from a camera view. But what are leading indicators that might give us an indication of temperature being an issue? So, are we seeing consistent usage of coats within a cold chain facility? In a facility that's too hot, are we able to monitor and use our visions to make sure that there's water stations appropriately set up? And these are just examples that I'm throwing out, but I think we look at this space in a very optimistic light in the sense that there's really interesting ways to take all of this live data to understand holistically what is happening in a facility, and tie it back to our mission at hand, which is making sure that folks have the tools and the support they need to be safe in their roles.
And it's interesting you say that, because I remember when we first met and we were talking about warehouse safety, it was one of the things I remember very vividly from when I was a child. And my father was working in a cold storage warehouse with the freezer rooms. And I remember going in there occasionally with him. But one of the things he did as the vice president of this facility, and operationally, he was the person who made sure that the refrigeration kept going. And whenever it was I don't know how the refrigeration works. That's not my forte, but I know that there was ammonia involved in the refrigeration. And when there was an ammonia leak, EMS would show up, the fire department, environmental, and they would go in and they're trying to find the source of the ammonia leak. My dad would go in with no PPE. He'd tell them he had to go in and breathe the air in order to identify and to feel the cold, to understand where the leak was. So it was incredibly unsafe. But that type of measurement of these, obviously that's a one-off situation. That's not daily ergonomics and daily work. But, making these facilities safer is, there's lots of aspects to it. There's the smell, there's the temperature, there's all sorts of other environmental aspects. So I'm eager to see what Voxel comes up with in the future to incorporate some of those other data sets to bring in and have a more comprehensive picture. What are there plans to expand your services? So right now you're only in the US. Is that correct?
We're actually quite global.
Okay.
We're live on 4 different continents, or deployed on 4 continents. I think a 5th very shortly. Really, it's customers that are driving us there. And so, hasn't been, sort of our intention to make a big splash going international previously. We were taken international to different facilities by customers that wanted to deploy our technology, generally starting in the US and seeing an opportunity to expand it out pretty rapidly. We were able to support that. But in June of this year, we did announce our intention to really go international and really continue to sort of invest in that segment of our business, as there is just a huge amount of opportunity, again, driven by our customers to extend our footprint.
Do you find that the different safety regulations in different geographies has an impact on what it is that you're looking for? I mean, obviously not every geography has the same safety standards or regulations. But if we're looking just to make sure that everyone gets home safely, the regulation really doesn't matter. I mean, it does at the end of the day. And there are companies that are looking to make sure that they stay within those regulations. But does that factor into any of the measurement or data comprehension that you're working with?
So I think there's continued opportunities and things that we're doing with customers to, sort of make the data set at their site or their geo more relevant to metrics that matter most for them. But I think, to your question, we don't get really too hung up on, we're going to forecast risk based off of this regulation in this country. We're going to look at the behaviors that, we have a strong conviction in, working with the large amount of customers that we have and the massive data set that we have to train our models of behaviors that actually, put humans at risk. And so regardless of where that facility is, we'll be able to provide those insights. Back to your original point, though, there's probably some opportunity as we, really work with more and more customers in these areas to even fine tune the type of insights that we provide a bit more. How does a company in the United States, sort of stay in compliance with OSHA regulations relative to another country? Sure, there's probably more to do there, something exciting. But when we think about forecasting risk, it's really much more around the human element versus, what regulations may exist in certain markets.
Well, and I love this dichotomy of using AI to ensure human safety. I think that's a fantastic use for the technology. So what do you see the role of AI in the workplace safety evolving over the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. I think one side note first, and just sort of that theme of, as we like to call it, within Voxel AI for good, it attracts, sort of really motivated folks. If I look across some of the technical members on our team that are really excited about the mission of building AI for that purpose, for that intent, something that's extremely tangible and, ultimately has those extremely positive outcomes. It's not here to outsource or, to do any of those. It's here to get people home safe. And so that mission is, just as a sort of, again, a side note, really drives a lot of people to what we're building here. I think there's a lot of folks probably better than me to forecast what the future looks in terms of AI. I think it's pretty incredible to see, just how rapidly, things are iterating and progressing and maturing. It's when I think about our business, it's, how do we, even more seamlessly sort of deploy use cases, even quicker and quicker? How do we surface, more tangible insights from larger data sets and relay that information to customers in a way that's extremely easy to digest and lead to action? And so, I can only imagine what we're going to be seeing 5 years from now. I imagine I can't even comprehend it right now, but it's an extremely exciting time to be in this space.
You know what? If we had said 5 years ago that this is where we were going to be today, we wouldn't have believed it. The world is changing so fast, in our industry especially, now that it's front and center of everyone's attention. So I'd say, I guess one of my last questions is, what is probably the best customer use case story, the best result that you've been able to achieve for one of your customers using this technology and helping them improve their employee safety? I mean, there's got to be someone who had some really big aha moments and was able to really tighten up and make things better for their employees.
Yeah, I think I'll mention two examples. one very tangibly measured and extremely safety focused. We were working with a customer that had some pretty catastrophic injuries, had pretty high exposure from a claims perspective as a result. And, generally speaking, knew this was something that they had to invest in. And sort of through our data, and, they had a good sense of this beforehand, but our data really, drove home exactly what they need to focus on. It really was around, sort of um, uh, vehicle related incidents and use cases within a warehouse environment, blowing through no stops, not clear drive lanes, the proximity monitoring was spiking. And so, we had a customer that really over indexed in, sort of re-engineering their facility to have clear drive lanes, instilled a very focused safety program on, training the right ways to use, and even had people out on the floor that were monitoring nose stops, on sort of rotating shifts, like over invested in making sure that vehicles were operating the way they're supposed to. And, year over year, they were able to drive their claims data down in one location alone by over $2 million. And so, that's obviously from a ROI standpoint, based off of, them investing in technology, quite positive. But more importantly, those represent, what would have been claims, which means something had happened that wasn't supposed to. So, that example alone, was just able to show sort of what is possible with the right change management and focus using technology like ours. One other one, I'll keep this example a little quicker, but I love to focus on sort of the intersection of operations and safety. We had a customer that noticed a huge number of ergonomic incidents spiking about 3 hours into a shift on two conveyor lines tied to two different dock doors. They're sort of looking at the data. It was an anomaly. What's going on? Why is ergo just happening right here? They took a step back and they realized, hey, we're actually directing trucks with all of our heavy product SKUs to these two dock doors only, and every other dock door is essentially moving pillows out
Get
of
the
it.
light stuff.
A better example. And so, 2 hours in every shift, the folks that were working these conveyors were just completely fatigued, strained, and it was leading to a huge increase in, improper motions that are leading indicators of risk. And so they sort of took this data and they said, okay, let's figure out better scheduling around our inbound full truckloads and redistribute them across a few different dock doors in the facility. In doing so, knock the ergo risk sort of that we were flagging out of the picture, but also increase their throughput quite a bit. They were a lot more efficient in terms of how they were unloading product and moving product through their facility. And so again, it's sort of really interesting intersection of operations and safety. And I'll say it again: a safe environment is an efficient environment, and an efficient environment is a safe environment. And so those type of insights are really interesting to see as well.
I love that, because that's not something that most people would even think about or consider is, you're receiving all day long and you're receiving all kinds of things, but what are you receiving and who is responsible for receiving it and how are they able to do it, and are they able to continuously do it throughout the shift? That's incredible insight that they may have spent years trying to figure out, dealing with injuries and, claims and employees out and having to, hire temporary staff or hire additional staff. I mean, there's a huge operational opportunity cost there that you're saving them from having to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jack, for joining us today and telling us more about your company's product and the safety that you're able to help companies achieve for their employees. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, Alan. It's great to be here.
So it's quite the step away from 0 days in the workplace without an injury stuck on a wall poster. To our listeners, if you found today's episode valuable, be sure to follow Speaking of Supply Chain wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone who's shaping the future of operations.